Now to our final segment. The peace process in Syria's long-running civil war broke down this week. Violence continues to escalate in Ukraine, and there's unrest in Venezuela. What is driving all of this tension, and what is the common denominator in these conflicts? Here to update us on the latest news and give us some perspective of what's fueling all of this is the advisor to the Anti-terrorism Caucus in the House of Representatives, an expert on the Middle East and the world, and our regular World Over contributor, Dr. Walid Pharis. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with, there was a House hearing recently on Capitol Hill about this ongoing Christian persecution. They say it's getting worse. Why hasn't it stopped?
Because the regimes who are involved in it, Iran, Sudan, but also the organizations, mostly the jihadists, are getting worse at persecuting them. In Syria, not only Al-Qaeda, more extreme than Al-Qaeda, Daesh is now going after Christian families. Hundreds of thousands are leaving the region.
Yeah, well, we hear about Nigeria, which we reported earlier in the show. Now, you supported at one time a special envoy that would sort of represent religious minorities at the State Department. Do you still advocate that?
The idea I have advanced in the past was to have a representative at the level of the administration that would go and meet with those leaders and represent them internationally. Unfortunately, what we have right now is a bureaucratic position, which is going to have reports to the administration, and the policy remains the same. While
we focus on Ukraine, and we're going to talk about it in a moment, this situation in Syria, this civil war has gone on for 4 years. Peace talks broke down this week in Geneva. John Kerry says Iran and Russia are to blame. You say what?
Well, I say the United States administration is first to blame itself, number one, because when it could have done things in 2011, we were still in Iraq. Al-Qaeda was not in. Hezbollah was not in. We did not. In 2012, we had our elections. 2013, we wasted time basically not putting enough pressure on Assad on the one hand, nor basically curbing down the activities of the jihadists. So we are harvesting what we have done.
Now this is spilling into Lebanon. You have all these refugees, 1 million of them, who have gone into Lebanon. What will be the spillover effect? And do you see Hezbollah getting involved now, because they're certainly a presence in Lebanon?
Hezbollah has been involved in Syria for the last year and a half. They have sent their forces inside the Assad areas and are moving against the other areas. Now they're getting blasted by Al-Qaeda. Lebanon, as you said, is going down as an extension of the war in Syria.
And this is becoming a launch pad, this entire region, particularly Syria, for global terrorism, global jihad. We have reports this week from the Department of Homeland Security. They're worried about a new type of shoe bomb.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on this, and where is this being developed? Where is this coming from?
The problem is that there are many other reports stating that the jihadist networks, including Al-Qaeda, is gaining a lot in Syria, coming into Lebanon, going back to Iraq. We're talking about 3 countries. That huge network is 5 times the size of what Al-Qaeda had in Afghanistan and in Pakistan before the 2001 attack, the 2001 attack. Therefore, I think that the basis that Al-Qaeda will have in Syria may not just be for Syria, they may be launching pads for the world.
Wow. We see this explosion of violence again, another uprising in Venezuela. In the wake of Chavez's regime, now you have the people rising up against this current regime. What is the common thread that you see running through what we're seeing in Kiev, what we're seeing in Syria, and now what we're seeing in Venezuela? Is there a common thread?
There is one that I can see, which is when the West in general, the United States in particular, abandoned those people to their fate. Look what we've done in Syria. We were about to intervene. We did not. Ukraine, we are not doing enough. We're doing resolutions. Europeans are even not doing anything.
Well, they're freezing assets.
They are perhaps at the end of every sentence. Yeah. And then in Venezuela, of course, we have allowed that regime to suppress. It's a neighboring nation. When that arrives to that point, then civil society would rise. That's what they've done actually in Egypt, if you recall, when we discussed how the Brotherhood controlled Egypt. We haven't done anything. Egyptian people rose.
Now, the president in Ukraine, he was supposed to craft a deal, solidify a deal with the European Union. At the last moment, in the 11th hour in November, he talks to Vladimir Putin, and Putin makes this offer of economic relief to him. He signs on and seems to be linking arms with Putin. The people have reacted in a terrible way since then, protesting first peaceably, now all hell is breaking loose on the ground. How do you get this thing back on track, and what does Vladimir Putin hope to achieve through this conflict?
Well, first of all, what he hopes that it won't be achieved is that Ukraine will join Europe. that would deprive him from an access to the Black Sea. And from the Black Sea, he can't even enter the Mediterranean, I mean, with his fleet and so on.
Right.
It's very essential for him. But at the same time, he is stopping a population, a European population in Ukraine to join the European community. So that is going to be a problem. And I think both sides are determined in this issue.
Now, the protesters want the president to leave and to have elections quickly. Do you see that happening?
It is not going to happen, because if he does that, he will lose, and Ukraine will move in the other area, and then the Russians will move in, and we will be close to a major crisis.
Now, the president said this week, this is not a chess game between the United States and Russia, and we shouldn't interpret it that way. Is it a chess game?
He doesn't want it to be a chess game. He doesn't want to have any chess game in the region. He has enough on his plate. But the Russians are playing chess, and they're playing it unilaterally at this point.
They're also playing it in Syria. We see it in Syria as well. We're seeing it all over the world. South Korea, North Korea, Syria, and now here. What is the option here? And isn't this outside of the United States sphere of influence, Walid?
It is outside of our traditional influence, but what is inside our influence is the fact that we should support the democratic movements. We have abandoned them since 2009, when the president basically abandoned the Iranian populations who were on the streets trying to rise. And of course, we've abandoned the civil society in Egypt, as I just mentioned, and in Syria, and in Venezuela, and now in Ukraine. There is a pattern, and people are understanding that in the region.
Very good. Dr. Walid Pharis, thank you for being here, as always, and for your insights. Walid Pharis' new book, The Lost Spring, will be out in March, and it'll be available in bookstores everywhere and online. Thank you again.